We made enough money to pay our rent. At this point, we say, you know, we're ordinary guys. I bet you there's a lot of other ordinary people like us that want to make some extra money, meet cool people. I asked Joe, I said, well, who's the best engineer you know? Joe said, well, my old roommate Nate is. And so the three of us got together, and we had a simple idea. What if you can book someone's home the way you could book a hotel anywhere in the world? And that's how it started.
And cut to today, where you have, as Terry said, I think it's more than 160 million guest arrivals, as you call it. 2 million people stayed in Airbnb on New Year's Eve alone that night. And you're worth $30 billion, or maybe it's 31 as of last week, I read. So I should have done this before, but does everyone know what Airbnb is? Please raise your hand if you know what Airbnb is, because you still sometimes have to ask. Okay.
Anyone ever stayed in Airbnb?
Used it.
Anyone's kids stay in Airbnb? I usually get more hands.
Before we get on to other stuff, just one thing that really surprised me about this whole story that you don't often hear about is how hard it was for you guys, once you decided this was going to be your idea, to get it off the ground.
Right.
People fled and ran away from this idea. People thought this was crazy.
We were trying to, in summer of 2008, I meet a guy named Michael Seibel. And Michael Seibel says, there are these people called angels, and they'll give you money. And the first thing I thought is, I can't believe this guy believes in angels. So that's how naive I was. And he introduced us to about 20 angel investors and a couple venture capitalists. At that point, we were trying to raise $150,000 at a $1.5 million valuation. So we would have tried to
million with an M.
Yeah, so 10% of the company. And probably got 20 introductions. About 10 to 12 or 13 probably didn't meet us. We probably met a half dozen people. People mostly ran away from everyone ran away from the idea. No one funded us. I guess three reasons, or two reasons. The first reason was Joe and I were designers, and as far as they were concerned, designers didn't start companies. Like, we didn't look like a tech founder, which I think is ridiculous, because I don't think you should ever hire someone because they look like something else. Like, you want a new thing, well, maybe they'll look different.
But everyone was looking for either the Zuckerberg model, a Harvard coder.
If you didn't drop out of Harvard, or you didn't drop out of a PhD program at Stanford, well, you weren't going to be the next Google or Facebook. And the point was, well, like, the previous tech company founders didn't drop out of Stanford. So it was a little absurd. But the bigger issue was people asked, well, first of all, how many airbeds are there in the world? In fact, when we were trying to do our first investor deck, we had to create a total addressable market. And so the first thing we thought is, well, how many airbed sales are there? And this is before we actually realized, like, because one day somebody said, like, I want to rent my bedroom. And I said, well, all you have to do is get a mattress, inflate it, and put it on your mattress. And I thought at some point we should open the model up.
Very narrow.
But the bigger problem was a simple idea. People did not think strangers would stay with other strangers. They thought it was crazy. In fact, I remember, if you think you've written about this, but one person told me, he said, Brian, I said, yes. He said, I hope that's not the only idea you're working on. And at some point in late 2008, one of the investors told us, because the financial crisis hits, and he goes, listen, the financial crisis is hit, the stock market's cratering. I can't even invest in good companies. You're going to invest in airbeds? And so that kind of hit home. So we ended up not raising money, and we ended up providing how, like, we say we did the Visa round, this is the joke Joe says, which is basically we got, you know those binders we put baseball cards in? We just put credit cards in them. So we probably each of us racked, like, I think I racked up like $25,000 of credit card debt. So we just, you know, until they stopped giving us credit cards. And then late 2008, we provide housing for the Democratic National Convention in Denver. And then we didn't make a lot of money with airbeds, so we thought, well, if we can't sell money with airbeds, we're airbed and breakfast. Let's go into the breakfast business. So we took a weird detour, and we ended up making collectible breakfast cereal, Barack Obama-themed breakfast cereal for the Democratic National Convention. We took Cheerios, we called it Obama O's, the breakfast of change, and we had a John McCain-themed cereal, Captain McCain's, a Maverick in every bite, and we basically handmade, like, cereal box in our living room in 2008, made $30,000 selling collectible breakfast cereal, and this is actually how we funded the company. At late 2008, my mom asked, are you a cereal company now? And you
didn't know how to answer her.
Well, no, because technically we were, actually. That's where we made most of our revenue. And so at some point, I'm like, well, cereal seems like a good business for now, but I don't want to have a cereal company. And so, you know, those were kind of the dark times.
So what's the lesson in there for other entrepreneurs?
Well, I think there's two things. I mean, first of all, a lot of entrepreneurs meet me and they say, I need to have investors, I need to raise capital. And I think like the first round we raised was $20,000 of capital. Like that was the first round we eventually raised. I think that startups today are overcapitalized. I mean, easy for me to say now, but like things get expensive with scale. But you don't need millions of dollars to start an idea. And actually, we almost have a rule that unless you have fixed cost, like you're in hardware, you have fixed costs. Ideally, you don't need any capital to create a prototype. Ideally, your co-founders, all with sweat equity, can create the product themselves. But there's this bigger lesson there, which is this. I think we just didn't quit. And I think a lot of people who try to do what we did or try to do other things, they quit, they stop short. And a lot of people ask, well, why didn't you quit? And the reason we didn't quit is if you start a company, very simply, you have to know something no one else knows about your business. Otherwise, why are you doing it? And why doesn't it already exist? So the big question is, what do you know that no one else knows about your business? You need to have a unique insight. And we had a very simple, unique insight. And it was totally by happenstance. In other words, we randomly rented our home one weekend. And so our unique insight was, it's actually not weird for strangers to stay with other strangers. And you can make a bunch of money, and the people who travel there can save money, have an amazing experience. If people could just experience what we experienced that one weekend, this would be an idea that would spread out in the world. And again, maybe thousands of people one day would use Airbnb. And that was our unique insight. And so that was kind of our North Star. And so we just kept thinking to that first week, and that's why we kept going.